gospel lesson for this morning is from St. Luke's Gospel, the 3rd chapter, beginning at verse 15. This is another part of the John the Baptist story. And as people were filled with expectation when John was baptizing, and all were questioning in their hearts concerning John whether he might be the Messiah, John answered them all by saying, I baptize you with water, but the one who is more powerful than I is coming. I am not worthy to untie the thong of his sandals. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. His winnowing fork is in his hand to clear his threshing floor and to gather the wheat into his granary. But the chaff he will burn with unquenchable fire. Now when all the people were baptized, and when Jesus also had been baptized and was praying, the heaven was opened, and the Holy Spirit descended upon him in bodily form like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased. Here ends the gospel. The title of the sermon this morning is Eyes Wide Open. And I'd like you to think about some of those times when your eyes are wide open about life, whatever it was. We've all had those experiences. Maybe you had some of those experiences at this holiday season. I remember what my kids looked like coming down those stairs on Christmas morning. That was always the definition of eyes wide open to me. And I'm sure that you probably felt some of that stuff yourself. Eyes wide open could be a lot of things. It could look like this. This eyes wide open presupposes something fearful, I think. I'm not sure. Here's another picture of eyes wide open. Two friends. You've all had this experience. Two friends, they're either sharing a story about someone else, which is quite often happening, or they're sharing something about themselves. One could be telling the other that she'd gotten engaged, for instance. Could be lots of things. Could be sharing a joke. We're coming to the conclusion through a lot of the brain research that's being done, and you're going to hear some about that today, that in fact, laughter is the closest way between two brains. When you are laughing with someone, you are really attached together with another person. This is one of my favorite pictures. You've seen this picture before. I've shown it before. It's one of my favorite pictures. These two boys, we don't know where they are, but they are definitely eyes wide open. What could they be looking at? You know, if you really stretch your imagination, these two boys, obviously they're not dressed for the right era, but they could be watching John baptize Jesus. What do you think? How do you look when you see a baptism? You look all stern. When the pastor brings the baby down the aisle and the baby looks at you like you're part of some zoo exposition. Do you look stern? Are your eyes wide open? You like to take this baby in? Even a child that isn't old enough to make a lot of expression. Those are times when we ought to have our eyes wide open and take in this new person that has come to us and is being received by us in the church. Well, by eyes wide open, I mean that we are fully engaged, that there's no distraction in front of us at the moment in lives. Most of our lives are very distracted. Now, we can't sustain that eyes wide open every minute. That's true. But there must be a significant part of who we are that we understand as ourselves when our eyes are wide open. and we are taking in something in life that is important and wonderful. Eyes wide open enable us easily, it's easy to say, to see more of life instead of pulling back. Eyes wide open allows us to reach out instead of staying put. And you can't have your eyes wide open and pretend not to see. Pretend so that you don't have to react. Pretend so you can just sit there in your own comfortable place rather than stepping out into a more creative place, but not as comfortable. I want to share an example of this that I have from my own ministry. I shared this with the Bible study class. I was interim minister for a while downtown in Worcester, and I attended that church. It was when I was teaching full-time and didn't have my own parish. I was teaching at the school. And every once in a while on Sunday mornings, on the other side of this church, now this is a very big church, seats about 750 people. On the other side where I sat, from where I sat, I would hear this. Would go on for a couple minutes maybe. I always wondered what it was. Now I become the interim minister. And just in that church is many times bigger than this one. I would do the announcements the same way at the beginning of service. I would go down the front aisle. And on the second Sunday I was there, I started the announcements and now sitting about 20 feet away from me was this older lady in the congregation, one of the pillars of the church. She was well up into her 80s. Her husband had been a minister, not at that church, but had been a minister, had a long career, and had died 3 or 4 years before. Her son was a very prominent person in Worcester, the head of one of the major organizations in the city. People were sitting in front of her. People were sitting in back of her. People were sitting on the right side of her. People were sitting on the left side of her. She was kind of sitting in the middle, but alone. She didn't have any family members with her. All kinds of people around her. It was her hearing aid. Now, those of you if you have hearing aids, maybe this doesn't happen anymore, but something happens to your hearing aid, it makes this noise, right? But then it would stop. I don't know if that's a low battery warning or what the heck it is, but the lady couldn't hear it. And everybody around her is doing this. Now, I'm standing in the middle of the aisle thinking to myself, you can already go through my thought process, can't you? What the heck are these people doing? So I walked up a little further, continued my announcements, walked down the aisle, scooted around a couple of people who were sitting about 8 feet away from this woman. And they're looking at me. So I tapped the lady on the arm, and she looks at me because she was looking the other direction, wondering, what the heck does he want? Is it time for the offering already? She had a lot of money, so it could have been that I would go for her for the offering by myself, make sure I got the right amount. I said to her, we'll call her Jane. Jane, your hearing aid is buzzing. What? Your hearing aid is buzzing. Oh, thank you. Pulls it out of her pocket, takes care of it. It's off. Now I'm walking back saying to myself, and everybody in the congregation is, So every Sunday morning, now I didn't have any relationship with this woman before. I hadn't even actually officially met her, although I was a member of the congregation. But it was a big congregation. There were 130, 140 people in church on Sunday morning.